Hello everybody, my name is Angus Phillips and I'm the Director of the Oxford International Centre for Publishing at Oxford Brookes University. Today I'm in conversation with Jonathan Glasspool, who is Managing Director of Bloomsbury's non-consumer division. So Jonathan, thank you very much for agreeing to be interviewed and in conversation with me. Perhaps I could ask you first of all to just describe briefly your role at Bloomsbury.
Well, thank you, Angus. Yes, so I look after what we call our non-consumer publishing, and we're defined by a negative in a way. Bloomsbury is very well known for its literary publishing and for its children's publishing, specifically Harry Potter. And crudely speaking, I look after everything else. And that's our educational and academic publishing and what we call special interest publishing. So books aimed at specific communities or niche interests.
Okay, so perhaps I could first ask you about the academic and professional side of the business you run. What are the kind of trends you've seen in recent years in those areas?
So we're seeing, or have seen up until the middle of March, a general trend moving away from print purchase towards digital. So all academic publishers in the past 5 to 10 years have seen good, robust growth in ebook consumption, particularly books used in the library sector. So North American libraries were increasingly buying digital ebooks over print. Why was that? Well, there's a physical cost. There's a cost to storing and cataloguing physical products. And secondly, the students can only access the book one student at a time, which is fine if it's a rare monograph or something. But if you're an academic and you want to prescribe the reading of a certain chapter from, say, a supplementary textbook, and only 2 copies are available in the library, that's a problem if you've got a class of 150. With ebooks and the way we sell them, all students on the campus and all academics have access to those products at any one time. So unlimited concurrent usage is a word you will hear in academic publishing. So that was the situation up until the middle of March. Because of the onset of COVID-19, we've seen really what I can only describe as a handbrake turn over the past month. To put this in perspective, we have a customer called Gobi, who are part of EBSCO. Gobi is probably the main university library discoverability service. And EBSCO has customers probably in every single university library in the North America. So that's north of 2,000 institutions. We were recently told that only 20 of their customers were ordering print at the moment. So less than 1% of their customer base were ordering monographs and minor reference works, the sort of stuff that's the bread and butter of many academic book publishers.
So that's a huge change.
It's a massive change in the space of basically a month. So typically, academic publishers were seeing maybe 70-30, 65-35 in favour of print to digital before COVID-19. Now it's more than that the other way around, 80-20, 90-10. So the big question for us in the short term is how do we manage that? And the answer is, well, with relative ease, all of our books have an ebook format, in fact 2 or 3 ebook format carnations, whether it's PDF, EPUB or Mobi Pocket. So that's fine, and we're happy for customers to order in any way they see fit, particularly if they order from us direct. The big question for us, as it is for other publishers, is whether this is going to change back. Arguably, it's anyone's guess. We will come out of this crisis at some point, though it may be not for another year until we see us coming back to what we used to deem as normal. during that time, we'll have got used to digital consumption. Our customers will have got used to digital consumption. Our students will have got used to accessing vast amounts of content online, in inverted commas, free through their university portal. And my contention is that I doubt whether a lot of those print sales will come back. Now, I may be proven wrong, and print technology is both a venerable but a very tough technology, and has proven to be incredibly resilient. I'm still amazed, frankly, at how many print books we continue to sell in our sector.
But presumably you can use digital printing mostly, so you can still print to order according to how the dynamic changes.
Yes. So we are printing all of our higher level scholarly print works now. Frontlist is now being done on print on demand, and that was a direct change. We've been contemplating it before, and one or two publishers had already gone down that route. But the economics of it now, certainly during the short-term crisis that we're in, are impeccable. It's crazy to tie up cash in unwanted inventory.
And you've invested quite a lot in sort of digital databases, haven't you, in recent years? Would you plan to fold all your ebooks into one big project, or how would that work?
Well, to some extent we already do. So all of the big academic publishers, and I guess we would count ourselves as one of those now, we produce nearly 1,800 books a year, have their own ebook platforms. And these are typically, so Taylor and Francis Online, Oxford Scholarship Online, Cambridge Core, and then Bloomsbury Collections. And these are effectively your entire catalogue, which is sold either as a collection or on a title by title basis. And typically the university, the publishers who are selling them, make it attractive both in terms of price but also in terms of access. So if you buy an ebook from Bloomsbury Collections, it's DRM free and unlimited concurrent usage within an institution. So that makes it a pretty compelling offer, as long as the university's got the budget to spend on it. So the short answer is yes, I think it's going to accelerate use of that. We've seen an extraordinary increase in the number of trials. So if I may put that in context, last year we had roughly 1,000 trial requests over the year. In the months of March and April combined, we had 4,000.
Really, gosh, yeah.
There's been a really, really big increase in demand, and it's pretty obvious. If you haven't got students and academics on campus, how do you, as a librarian, do your job as far as making available intellectual property to that audience? The only way they can do it is through digital. So the handbrake turn has been expressed both internally but also amongst our customers. So talking to a head librarian at a medium-sized British university the other day, she said, I've been trying to persuade academics and their customers, the students, to use my digital resources as part of the course for years, in many cases. Overnight, more or less, I'm now the most popular person in the university because academics are coming to her and saying, please, can you provide this textbook or this set of titles for my students, because I've got to teach this course now online, 101, whatever it is, economics, business, the whole works. So we're seeing a really big shift at the moment. And I think the short term is how do we cope with that? And the answer is obviously allocation of resources internally. But secondly is the longer term, is what longer term repercussions this is going to have for our sector. So very simple, practical internal issues for us are typically most book publishers allocate origination costs. So origination costs are editing costs, proofreading, typesetting, that sort of thing. Those costs are typically attributed to the print editions of a work and then spread over a print run or two print runs, depending on whether you're a textbook publisher or not. That's the way we traditionally worked. If, say, 70 or 80 or 90% of your income is now coming from ebook formats, which traditionally we've not attributed any origination costs to, then we're going to have to rejig things internally. So that's a publisher's problem. It's a short-term issue, but it's definitely a live one for many publishers at the moment.
Yeah, so that would be a structural change in the way you think. Yeah, definitely.
Correct.
You've invested in databases like the drama database and other projects like that, haven't you?
Yeah. So we ever since we founded the academic division 12 years ago, we knew that digital products, born digital products, were going to be a big part of what we did. So our first digital resource came out in 2010, Berg Fashion Library, which is a fashion studies product aimed at fashion students. And these resources have been very popular and were very popular up until COVID-19. It's true to say now that we're seeing a lot more interest and active sales because universities have got a real problem. It's relatively easy, I'm to use the word carefully, relatively easy for a university to deliver a course in history using social distancing. It remains to be seen how a university can deliver, say, a music or a performing arts course. The resources that we have are actually mainly in the humanities and in applied disciplines like that. So, their time has come in a way. So we've seen very, very healthy growth year on year. The year just gone, financial year just gone, we saw 30% growth in that range. Since then, the first 2 months of this year, it's in excess of that. So it's very encouraging because it's helping mitigate the loss of the print sales, though not completely.
Yeah. So up to the crisis, what sort of subject areas or territories of the world were you seeing growth in? Was it across the board, or were there particular segments that were doing well for you?
For us, for digital services, it was genuinely across the board. There are we're a UK publisher and best known in the UK and Commonwealth, largely because of Harry Potter, of course. And our presence in North America was smaller, and we haven't helped ourselves by retaining historic imprint names. So whilst we have a big output, people know us for our specific imprints. If you're an academic interested in drama, you know us because of Method in Drama. So what we've seen very, very healthy double-digit growth in the what we call the three main sort of geographic regions of North America, Europe and Asia, particularly the Far East. Within those regions, particularly strong markets for us were Australia, as a very digitally oriented higher education sector, partly because they're possibly more iconoclastic than their UK colleagues, and not afraid to try new things. But secondly, because of the reasons of geography and distance, online really works for them. And proportionately, their growth has been way ahead historically of many of our territories. East Asia, China, we've seen excellent growth. That's partly as a smaller company, we are still setting up our business there. We set up Bloomsbury China at the end of last year, though we've had sales staff in that territory for some time. So it's been exciting. China, the number of students starting undergraduate courses in China has grown exponentially over the past decade. And even though the majority of those are in STM and in social sciences, there's still a very large number studying humanities. And those disciplines want our content.
And are you seeing any uptick in audio in the markets that you're I mean, the non-consumer markets?
The increase in, there has been, yes, in some disciplines. There's obviously a huge crossover, say, in the area of philosophy, between what I would call the academic audience and a wider trade one. The audiobook market has seen massive growth over the past. That's been probably the biggest story in the past 3 or 4 years in the consumer sector, fueled, of course, by the Audible service from Amazon. We signed a new deal with them last year with Audible, and the growth has been very good. Most of the major trade publishers now have their own bespoke audiobook program, i.e. they originate the audiobooks themselves. And it's been a really interesting market. There's clearly a huge demand. Interestingly, since the COVID outbreak, it's been more mixed, I think. And of course, if you think about how people consume audiobooks, they often do that on a commute. And if you're not commuting, there's less opportunity to do so. Set against that, people have got more time to listen. So I think it's, but I think to conclude on this point, there's that we can continue to see very robust growth in audiobook because it's people now have the platform in their pocket, their smartphone, to deliver that particular format.
And also within your remit are the sort of specialist interest areas like military history, natural history. Can you tell me a bit about what's happening there?
Well, it varies. Some of the disciplines are doing very well, where they lend themselves to a hobby or pastime that people can do under restrictions. So, somewhat to my surprise, we have probably the world's leading bird watching list under Christopher Helm imprint, and that list has done really well over the past 2 months. I think we do a lot of books with the RSPB, one of our main publishing partners in the group. Actually, we have probably over 100 books with them now, and those books have been really popular. People are spending more time thinking, staring out the window. It's an activity you can do in your garden.
Yeah.
Military history in some areas, ditto. The issue we have with that imprint is more of a sectoral one, which is a lot of those titles were selling through retail outlets. And Barnes & Noble, for instance, in the States, though it's opening up slowly now, was closed for the best part of 2 months. I think, our view on this is that for those lists, where we've seen a downturn, it's because of supply chain issues, which are around the fact that, simply put, the book customer can't actually find our books in a book because they can't get in. Of course, they can find them online, and online has been going very well.
Yeah.
But, so we see that as more of a sort of short-term issue that should unravel as the response to the crisis changes.
And people want to get back to nature, and hopefully that will be more of a long-term trend.
Here's hoping.
Yeah.
Here's hoping. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you're leaving your role in the summer, is that right? So how do you see publishing developing over the next few years? This is an opportunity to reflect on the future of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, what are the changes that are going to happen in the next 5 years? Well, depending on the severity of the recession and how long this crisis goes on for, we're going to see a shift in our market. And we've talked a bit about that in terms of digital consumption. The extent of that is still yet to be seen. The longer it goes on, the more likely it is that people are not going to revert back to the formats they used before. the convenience, the ease of use, the functionality that you get with digital products will, I think, mean that we'll see a much more of a mixed economy in the future. And my guess is that at least by this time next year, my guess would be, I would say 50% of our revenues will come from digital products. It's way north of that at the moment, but that's because of the extreme circumstances we're in at the moment.
So what would your usual percentage be?
Around 30.
Right, yeah.
30. It was growing at a sort of very, very steady growth. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, it would have been closer to sort of 20%. And now, in some of our genres before COVID-19, it was closer to 35. Because of the changes over the past 2 months, it's way north of that at the moment, but that's largely because of the restrictions. So that's one thing. I think the other thing, and which is a genuine concern I have, is that we actually work in a very rich ecosystem with many small independent presses, with many small independent university presses that are funded by universities, over 60 in the US, if not more than that. Many of those, if the recession is severe and if budgets are cut in higher education, will close. And this has grave implications for the variety of books that our customers can access. And obviously it creates opportunities for bigger publishers like ourselves who are better capitalized. So I would expect there to be more acquisition activity, possibly over the next year or 2 years, if the grievous situation continues. So those are two things that I think will characterize. And then thirdly is open access. So notwithstanding all the practical problems and short-term issues that we're dealing with, the open access agenda continues. UKRI remains committed to making funded scholarly content available free at point of use. And that will also affect many publishers in my sector over the next 3 to 5 years, if that's not already doing so.
So what's your OA model at the moment?
So any academic author can publish with us on the gold open access basis. We've also experimented with Creative Commons, and the experiment was possibly too small for us to draw too many conclusions, other than the fact that, surprisingly, the conventional sales from books that were made available through Creative Commons were actually not hugely different, and in some cases were way in excess of traditionally published titles. So that gives us reasons for optimism. Does that mean I would bet the farm on a green open access model? Absolutely not. It just simply wouldn't work. So that's a big, thorny, hairy problem that we have to deal with in the next 3 years.
Yeah. And so just to finish, really ask you, what do you think the future of the book is within the ecosystem of professional educational publishing?
The irony is that despite everything I've just said, there's still a huge demand for long form scholarly output in the humanities. It's still the best vessel, let's call it that, for a scholarly output in disciplines like history and literary studies. That won't go away. People's tenure is dependent on books, such things being published. Whether it's in digital format or in print is a moot point. My view is that we will continue to see a hybrid model. It's just the way that they are produced is different, and the proportion in which they're produced is different. So the primary form of publication will be online, whether that's open access or not, and there will continue to be a print output for as long as I'm alive, certainly. So I'm very confident about the future of the book. I mean, in a way, you can see it in audiobooks. Audiobooks were the Cinderella of trade publishing for decades, certainly the first 2 decades of my working life. Suddenly, they're now the sexy area because everyone wants to listen to your favorite actor reading their favorite book. People still want to hear stories. So I'm absolutely hugely confident in the future of our sector, not because of us, but because of demand. There's still huge demand for what we produce.
Well, that's very good to hear, and thank you very much for talking to me, Jonathan, and thank you.